Welcome to Doctors Rating Trends. This is where twin doctors get together and look at the trends of today and put in our 2 cents. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I've been in practice for 10 years. My name's Dr. Jones. This is the other Dr. Jones, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, by way of training, I also have an MD and then went on to use it in the venture capital space to try and discern what's real and what's BS in the early stage pharma and device development world. So I've been calling BS on bad technologies for many years now and decided to bring that skill to the masses. And today we will be using those skills to address the keto diet.
So I'll get us started by talking about the ketone diet or the keto diet and what the basis for it is. The primary source of energy for your body is glucose, and you get this easily from sugar. So things like Snickers, pie, anything that tastes sweet that has sources of sugar in it, you're going to get a very quick shot of glucose as your body can break this down very easily. A more efficient way to get energy is through the starches because this is a highly packed form of carbohydrates. And then your body can break that down and then further break it down into glucose. And on a day to day basis, this is how you fuel all of your body functions. What happens though when you go below 20 grams of carbohydrates a day is that your body can no longer use outside sources of energy to fuel its functions, and it's got to look for an alternative source. So the alternative source is fat and protein. When it no longer has the carbohydrates, it breaks down fat and protein into ketone bodies, and then it uses these ketone bodies for energy. There are some nice signs that this diet is starting to work, that you've sufficiently cut out all the carbohydrates and you've dropped into this state where you're breaking things down into ketones, because ketones are secreted through a couple of different methods in the body. One of the byproducts, called acetone, is secreted through the lungs, and you have a very distinctive sweet breath that happens because of the acetone that you're excreting out every time you breathe out. Another ketone body, in a more objective way of discovering if you're in a ketotic state or not, is through the urine. It's excreted through the urine, and there are strip tests for this where you can put a strip in your urine and it'll tell you if there are ketone bodies in there and if you're adhering to the diet the way that you should. So the body will break down whatever it has available into the ketones. So if you're primarily muscle, you'll break down more muscle than fat. If you're primarily fat, it'll break down more fat than muscle. Then this diet, generally speaking, in the studies they've shown, if you're equal amounts of both, it'll preferentially go after the fat over the muscle. And that's why it's a popular diet. How it works, it seems straightforward, but there's a lot of different mechanisms that scientists are still looking at. You're breaking down your fat stores, and as you're breaking down your fat stores, your body doesn't want to absorb fat as much, and those are two big reasons why you lose weight with this diet. There is a lot of energy that's used to go through this less efficient way of getting energy. Breaking down the fats, breaking down the proteins takes a lot more steps and takes a lot more effort for the body than just getting it simply out of the carbohydrates. And so just using a lot of energy to get energy will also help burn calories, and you can lose weight that way. There is a theory out there that if you're in a ketotic state, the ketones in your body are an appetite suppressant. And then the high protein diet, which is often associated with ketosis or this ketone diet, often is an appetite suppressant as well in a lot of people. So, applications of the ketone diet. It was first studied in epilepsy. They've found that if you go into a ketotic state in certain forms of epilepsy in children, that it cut down on the episodes of epilepsy that the children were experiencing. So a lot of the early literature in this diet was based around pediatric applications. And one of the things they found when they were doing this to cut down on epilepsy is that they took these little fatties and turned them into thinner children and decided to apply that to older people. The the number one reason that people use this, I'll drop to the bottom of the list, is short-term weight loss. There's several studies out there that show that the initial weight loss is almost universal, and a lot of them will show 10 pounds of weight loss right in the first month of, of this diet. The long-term weight loss is a little bit more controversial. There's mixed studies on this, and one of the problems they found is that if you go off of a ketone diet or a keto diet, and you go back to your normal diet, you just put the weight back on. And one of the things that they did, it was a study out of Europe, they did have an effective study where they showed people got into a ketone diet, and then they moved on to a Mediterranean diet, which is generally a lot healthier than a Western diet. And they were able to maintain 10% weight loss over the course of the year that they were on that Mediterranean diet after they'd lost the weight with the keto phase. So that's what we found in the medical literature. There was another study that was done. It was a small case study. It used two exceptionally good-looking surgeon doctors. They are Ivy League trained, and they had managed to pack on some energy storage through the winter and need to lose that before beach season. So both of these exceptionally good-looking doctors went on to a strict carbohydrate restriction, got into ketosis, and then the results were reviewed in the Aspen Highlands in one of the testing centers for diets. And here you can see the obvious results with the keto diet with those washboard abs. And obviously with this, when you're in a keto diet, you're not allowed to drink champagne because it will kick you out of ketosis. So this was definitely the end of the diet at this point. So there you have it. And I'll pass this on to my brother.
So, what's wrong with the keto diet? There's a lot of things that I could say about that day where we got the picture of Jackson. And specifically, the one that's going to pertain to this presentation is the fact that prior to that picture, he was lying on the ground, sucking wind after about 3 turns on the slopes. The keto diet is really difficult to balance with any sort of high intensity activity, except for drinking. But he's getting his carbs then at that point, so he's able to rev it back up. Anyway, so getting into my 5 main points of problems with keto, first and foremost is that there is no long-term data on effectiveness. Jackson did mention a study where people were able to successfully transition from keto to Mediterranean diet and have some weight loss. But in general, this is a new diet that has ramifications that we just don't know yet for the most part. So the lack of long-term effectiveness, A, on weight loss, but then B, also on the long-term potential downside, for your health in switching over to high fat and high protein really needs to be studied specifically for cardiovascular health because you're really jacking up your cholesterol levels oftentimes. The next is the weight loss that you experience early on is dramatic and mostly water. So when you cut the sugars out of your diet, that's going to cut a lot of different other things out there that hold on to water. A lot of those foods have a lot of salt in them. The sugar also retains water. And so you're going to see immediate results. It's going to look good. It's going to feel good with regard to, actually seeing the weight shed off. The problem is that when you reintroduce those carbs, the weight packs back on immediately because, again, it's water-based for the most part. Now, the one thing that's going to counteract that water loss sort of euphoria of having the quick weight loss is something called the keto flu. And what that is that the keto diet, when you switch over, it's kind of like going from high octane, nitrous infused gas over to solar power. Your body is used to having this quick energy. It doesn't have it anymore. It actually just makes it straight up sick for a number of days. There's a variety of different responses. Some people get a bad flu, some don't, but it really is flu-like. People experience a cough and they feel extremely run down, and that can actually knock people out of being compliant with the diet. Next up is that they long-term cardiovascular vascular risks are not known yet, but from an intuitive standpoint, people wonder if the extremely high fat and high cholesterol diet is going to cause problems for you. Now, it is supposed to be a low inflammatory disease, and some of cardiovascular disease is an inflammatory process, but that might be balanced out by how much fat you're taking in. And that's actually a good point. This is a good point that people need to understand, is that this isn't just a free license for you to pound as much bacon as you possibly can. It is true that you're going to be able to lose weight and eat some of the salty goodness that is bacon and pork and some of these other things that are ketogenic. But it also means that you're going to be really infusing quite a bit of cholesterol into your body, and that could have some deleterious effects, both short and long term. And then finally, is quite frankly, this is a difficult diet to hold on to. A lot of the great things in life, like beer and wine and ice cream, are not ketogenic, and it's difficult quite often to find things on a menu that don't have zero carbs in them. And you might yearn for some of these things that you wanted in the past, and just a tiny amount of them kick you out of ketosis. So it doesn't take that much juice to hit that 20 carb limit and kick you right out. So you have to stay strict with it, and this is a difficult thing to maintain. So those are the 5 main problems with keto. So you got to look out for a lot of issues with this diet, but something to think about is that there's also a school of thought and research that shows that different types of people are going to do better with different types of diets. So if your body's evolved into this, if you're from an Inuit background or American Indian background, where you didn't see a lot of carbs over generations and generations and generations, there's a good chance you're going to do better with this than and again, on an individual basis, this could vary quite a bit, but from a population standpoint, there's a better chance that you're going to do better well with it than say someone with Irish roots that's has generations of potatoes in their background and all kinds of different starches. So that's something also to consider. As with any diet, it really depends on your own personal body chemistry, but this one definitely has some downsides. What are your thoughts, Jackson?
I agree with you. I think there were some mistakes that we made in our little case study. One of the big ones is we were being extremely active. We added a lot of physical activity into it on just beyond the dieting, and one of the things that I read was you do have to increase your protein uptake quite a bit, so you're replacing any losses that this diet's trying to create in burning protein. Um, so there was that confounder on our experience with it. And they said even 50% increase in protein over what you would normally do if you're going to do heavy activities or try and develop any sort of muscle gain. In terms of the long term, I see in clinic anytime that anyone just goes back to their old habits, doesn't matter what the diet is, how good it is. You can even get your stomach stapled and have great results from that and eventually eat your way through it. So bad habits are bad habits, and you got to break the bad habits. If you want to just an easy way to knock your weight down to kick things off and then go to a sensible diet, I think this is a pretty reasonable way to go. I can tell you, just experience a lot of the, if you're looking for short-term weight loss, you've got a wedding coming up. A lot of the models that I've dated in the past used to use keto diets to lose weight before a photo shoot or any sort of time in front of the camera, and it was extremely effective. the flip side of that is occasionally they landed in the hospital with kidney failure. So if you're going to do a keto diet and you are going to be running a lot of ketones through your kidneys, don't go water restriction also. You're going to get plenty of effect from the diet itself, restricting water, um, and like you're saying, you eat like hell, or you're eating tons of bacon and tons of cholesterol. You still have to be sensible even though you're doing the diet, or there's going to be repercussions.
And that's something to think about is that what is your goal with the diet? You know, if you're referencing the models, for instance, the tried and true model, Kate Moss diet, by reputation, who knows if she actually did it, is, the vodka and cocaine, and you're going to lose weight. It's just not a good long-term sustainable way to go. So you just got to ask yourself, what's your goal, and how. And quite frankly, with any diet, you just need to be sensible about it. This, again, is not a free license to just eat piles and piles of bacon.
And like you were saying, you want to look good dancing on a table in the Aspen Highlands. Great choice. You want to kick ass ski in the bowls in the Aspen Highlands, not so much. So
Yeah.
we'll take it down to the score sheet here, and on the scorecard that we have, common sense test, knocking out all of your easy carbs to get an alternative form of energy, which then burns your fat, makes sense from a common sense standpoint. I think we both agree on that one.
Yep.
Solid evidence. I thought there was convincing enough evidence, definitely in the short term, and then there's just kind of a no shit study that said if you go to a sensible diet, maybe you won't put the weight back on after you lose the initial weight. So I like the evidence that was part of it. What are your thoughts?
I again, the evidence. This one just kind of depends. If the evidence is, can you lose weight with it? Yes. If it's a good long-term plan, the evidence just isn't there, and there's also some downsides with it as well. From energy loss standpoint, and the way that people apply it. It's not a very good long-term sustainable way to live your life for a lot of people. So you have to look at a very specific cases and body types, and then have to understand what their goals are too. And then maybe it makes sense, but the evidence that I saw was a little bit lacking when it came to you know uh, being able to apply it to the broad public for a long period of time.
And then I would do it again next time I do more protein. So I wasn't so depleted in terms of energy. Probably wouldn't do it for very long. I'd do it for the short term if I were just trying to lose weight quick. From a long term standpoint, it certainly doesn't fit my lifestyle, and this I wouldn't apply it that way. Your thoughts?
It depends. Again, if you want to lose some weight quickly, it's probably not a bad way to go. I did eat a lot of protein. I still gassed hard, and I think that maybe you just need a long time for your body to evolve to that kind of a diet before you, and maybe ratchet up the exercise slower. But it's not an experiment that I'd run again. It made me feel like hell, so I wouldn't do it. But if you don't do a lot of strenuous exercise and need to make spring break or a wedding, then it might be right for you.
All right. Well, until next time.
Sounds good. That'll do it.